Hi, I'm Videobob. Today I'm going to talk about my Bang & Olufsen component stereo system. I realized I hadn't done a video about this thing on my channel, I don't think, and I've been trying to assemble one of these component systems now for a couple of years. It's kind of hard to put these together. You generally won't find something like this all in one, at least not that works. Now, I'm not going to go into the entire history of Bang & Olufsen. I've talked about some of their products in the past that I'm a big fan of theirs, and I've done product reviews of some of their more recent things. This particular system is from, I believe, 1994, and it is the last of their individual component systems. You're seeing 4 different units: a phono player here, the record player. Underneath that is the tuner. Up here is the CD player. This is your CD player. And then below is the cassette player, this little drawer, and I'll show all this in a lot more detail. This is a master control unit. And this particular remote doesn't necessarily go to this system. This is to a much earlier system, as much as almost 10 years before. But I find that this master control unit is just so cool. This one went to their 5000 series. This is the Master Control Panel 5500, but I just really like it. And it went to one of my previous ones. I'm going to show you a more modern remote that would have went to this one. But generally, you have your basic bar remote. This one is the Beolink 1000. The thing about their remotes is almost all of their remote controls are compatible, at least one direction anyway. This is a bidirectional remote. But you can use just about any Bang & Olufsen remote, and we'll talk about that here in a moment, some of the other remote options. Now, what makes this thing special? Okay, there's a lot going on here that we got to talk about. And for those of you that are familiar with these, you might be impressed already that, number one, this table that it's sitting on was called the Attica system. And you may notice that it's different than any of the other ones you've seen because it's been modified. This particular table is called the Attica 2, which normally would have a secondary shelf here. And that shelf has been removed. And I know you might think that's crazy, sacrilegious for me to do that. But this is how I wanted it, because normally they're multi-tiered. The regular Attica 1 would have a shelf here, and then it's about this size, but they were 2-tiered. And they were kind of designed to hold their televisions and a component stereo, or you could have the 3 stacks and the turntable here. They were very modular. This triangular section down here, you can hold records and different media. And it is manufactured by Bang & Olufsen and is labeled as such. This one, the Attica 2, which had this secondary shelf, I removed the shelf, and you know, I know that's crazy to do, but I wanted it to look this way in this configuration, and I was just willing to do that. These tables are very hard to find. You'll pay anywhere from about $500 to $3,000 to find one, and they're very rare, especially in the United States. Now, flanking each side are the Penta speakers. Now, there's been various versions of the Penta speakers. These are powered speakers, and you know, if I were to, I'm not sure if any of these are loose, if I were to remove their covers. I didn't even think about doing this. But for the purpose of the video, I will. There we go. Just to show you what's going on here. There's a lot going on. The top one here might be a little bit more difficult. I didn't plan on doing this. Let's see. Well, you can see there are 9 speakers. So you have a series of cones here, and then these other subwoofers. These are powered. Trust me when I'd say there's a lot going on inside these tower speakers. I actually have several sets of these. And is that upside down? Let me make sure I get this correct, because these, I need to have these refabricated. There we go. There we go. So these are very heavy. They're stainless steel covered speakers. And you can see that they have screens built on here that will show you what device you're using. So for instance, I don't know if you can see that on camera, but if I go to, like, for instance, audio tape, let me see. And this remote may not support it. Let me let me go to my bidirectional remote. If I select aux, it would say AU. If I go to radio, let me turn the...
Veterans get through life. Most veterans can obtain...
Luckily, that's a commercial. So I can turn that down. And you'll notice it will show you the units of what's happening there. If I go to phono, I don't have a record in there. But if I were to hit phono, it's going to spin up. The laser is going to look for a record. It's going to sense that there's not one there. And we're going to talk about how, excuse me, we're going to talk about how advanced that is. So there's a lot going on. This was a very, very high-tech system. You got to think that around 1994, to buy this complete system, these components, as you see here, you could go buy a pretty decent car, probably for about the same amount of money that you would pay for a system like this. This was for the wealthy and for the very rich. So you're talking about a high-end system that would have been unobtainable for someone like me as a teenager growing up in the 90s. Now, most people are familiar with the integrated Bang & Olufsen systems. Probably, if you're my age, you remember going to the mall, maybe by a Sharper Image, and you saw that glass-paneled CD player. You'd walk up to it, and the glass would move like the doors of a grocery store would open. There'd be a CD player, cassette, or some other combination with the flat speakers. Those were $2 or $3 grand. Those were expensive units. This thing, I don't know the exact pricing off a hand, but I think a pair of these speakers alone, which were, I think might have been sold individually, were probably $1,500, and that's in the 80s and through the 90s. They made these speakers for a long time. They made several versions of the Pentas, the 1s, the 2s, the 3s, and it really just had to do with the amount of power output they had and the type of connections they had, whether or not they had just straight wire connections or when they had the data link and the power link system that they have. There's a lot to unpack there, and I'm not going to go into the entire history of these things. I just want to turn people on to the world of Bang & Olufsen because, in my opinion, this isn't the highest end of audio, but if you were to go to Bang & Olufsen's website now and look at the speakers they're selling, you could easily spend $150,000 on a pair of their speakers. And even in the world of audiophiles, that's still not the top end. But growing up through the 80s and 90s, they made just some of the most cutting edge stuff. And even back into the 60s and 70s. I mean, I think Bang & Olufsen made the first portable radio ever, if I have that history correct. Now, this stuff's made in Europe. I think it's made in Denmark, I want to say. Forgive me if I'm wrong about that. But I just wanted to show kind of up close some of the operation of this thing. And I think that you're going to be impressed because even in the year 2024, there really is nothing. There's absolutely nothing that you could buy that's like this. I mean, there are a few nice turntables being made by Technics and a few other people. But being that vinyl's having a resurgence and people are wanting to get into traditional hi-fi, I just wanted to share this system with a lot of people because it's something that you may not know about. And you've probably only seen some of the crappier, maybe American or Japanese stuff that's out there. And you weren't familiar with this higher end stuff. I mean, the quality level of this, I mean, the stainless steel and the wood and the aluminum and the materials that they're using, it's off the charts cool. Okay, this is a remote that you might have used with this system. This is their 7000 remote. This is a touch screen remote. I know it's going to be very difficult to see the screen. I'm going to see if I can bring it close. Oh, let me touch it again. Let's see here. So I don't know if you can, it's very, very difficult to see on camera, but I don't know if you can make any of that out. So it's a very difficult to see because it's definitely very old. But I've refurbished this remote quite a bit. I've replaced the battery pack in it. And you can see that, and this is also a touch panel, okay? Now imagine in the early 90s, this is incredibly mind-blowing technology. And one of the things about almost all Bang & Olufsen products, they like to motionize, animate their products in some way. I mean, almost every single thing I've ever seen them make, something opens or moves or whatever. This thing's going to blow you away by how cool it is. So as you're holding it, when you set it down, watch what happens when you set this thing down. Do you believe that? Look at that. It rises up to greet you so that you can sit here. Now, it has a dock also. I could show you the battery dock, but and there's also an available stand. So this thing can sit, so you're in your easy chair, and this is sitting next to you. It raises up to greet you, and you can control the various functions of your unit this way. And then when you pick it up, watch that. It flattens itself out to be this flat panel. Now, this is a big, chunky unit, but it's a bidirectional unit, so it communicates both to and from. But I find it's just very hard to use because the screen is very hard to see. The contrast has gone bad on it. I need to maybe replace this screen, but a remote like this would sell separately, and you would pay $500, maybe $1,000 for this remote. I think I paid $500 or $600 for it, and then I replaced the battery pack in it. But just watching it do this function, that alone to me was worth the price of admission, okay? It's just that I can tell that I'm sure that Apple was very inspired by Bang & Olufsen products. Let me put this away. Now, I've showed this in other videos. This is also a remote control. This is called the Bayo time. It's also known as the flute clock. You can see that there are screens here where you can see the time, all right? And you can see what time it is. But this part right here is a remote, and at the end, there's a remote here. This pops out, and this is how you turn the alarm on and off. And this could be used to control your unit on a timer, turning it on or off to wake you up, whatever. Now, this is interesting. Watch this. Notice the orientation. Watch what happens when I rotate it. It will correct itself. So you can point it in any direction you like, and it will reorientate to the... I mean, that's some high-tech stuff. This thing is machined aluminum, and have you ever seen anything like that? But it performs as a remote. So like if you point this at it, you know, you can, I don't know if you can see on the speakers there, the numbers raising and lowering. Now it's kind of difficult to navigate the menu here, pressing this button to find the thing you want, right? You can go through that, right? But anyway, the point is that these are the types of things they do. Let me put this back. This is another Bang & Olufsen remote. This one has this screen on it. Sometimes this screen is translucent. Now this was made to work with some of their televisions and other systems. Now this is a much more modern remote that's probably 5 years ahead of the stereo system or more, maybe 10. But the point is that you can really pick up any Bang & Olufsen remote from any time period and it will work. You can see it's operating the numbers there. Now, this one's a little bit more complicated, and it's showing things on here. There were light modules you could get and turn lights on and off. They eventually had satellite systems, televisions, all sorts of things, and this would work with any of them. So just as a reference, if you get into the Bang & Olufsen game, all of their remotes will work all of their stuff. May not have the functions you're looking for, but it'll work it. Like I said, the most simplest remote is their 1000 bar remote. And by the way, if you ever hold one of these in your hand, any of their products, this is metal. Okay, this is not plastic. This thing weighs a good pound or so. It's a heavy, it's metal. It's cast probably magnesium or machined aluminum, whatever it's made out of. It's very robust, heavy. It has like a rubberized feeling on the bottom. You feel quality. It's a quality that you're just not used to dealing with. In today's world of injection molded plastics and things, you've probably never held a remote like this that's made of this kind of metal. And you know you're dealing with something of genuine quality. That's the feeling with all this stuff, all right? It's all the quality of how all of this stuff is made. Now, let's go one by one here. Let's start with the CD player. One of the things you'll notice is there's generally no buttons on these things. Now, you've got a power button usually on the right that turn it on and off, and then a eject or open. Look at how that opens, how smoothly that operates. You ever seen something like that? Now, I'm just going to grab a CD here. This case is broken, but we can't play any of the music, obviously. But I want you to see. Now, just because I've put the CD in doesn't mean anything's happening, because first of all, I'm not selected on CD. So let me select CD, and now it will activate this system. Let me see if I can get a close-up So here it's displaying the track listing, only goes up to 14. So, you know, if I were to select play, now we can't play any of the music, obviously, but we can skip a track or two. Now, this is all you're going to see here. And then on the speakers, it would also show you that you're on CD. Now, there is no eject here. There's only a power off. So you would come to the unit and then you would eject the disc. And let me back up a little bit so you can see it. Just a really smooth operation. I've found that the majority of the CD players in the Bang & Olufsen catalog, at least this, especially the earlier versions, they generally have non-functional CD systems for some reason. By this time they'd had it figured out, but it seems like every other vintage Bang & Olufsen CD player that I've found, they just didn't work. So be very careful when you're trying to find. This was one of the issues trying to put together this system, because trying to find all 4 components that are working perfectly, that's difficult. Okay, let's show the cassette here. First, let's select cassette, which I don't know if this remote is a little later. I don't know if it has cassette. Let me use this one here, and we will select tape. There we go. And you'll see that that has lit up. Let's eject this. Take a look at this layout. Let me see if I can zoom in a bit. There we go. I want you to be able to see what's happening here. We've got a cassette. This is a nice Madonna cassette. Put that in. It really plays electronic music the best. And, you know, I wonder if I can demonstrate this. I don't know if I can do this without triggering something. First, let me just show you this. We'll just show it playing. And as the audio comes in, you will see a VU meter here on this display. And you can change this display as it goes. Now, you can see the VU meter is moving. But that VU meter takes on a different function when it's time to fast forward. Watch this. I can hit next, right, on this remote, and it will now show you the direction of tape travel. And because I didn't press stop first, it's going to go to the next track listing. So this was a common feature on cassettes back in that era, that it would just look for the blank spot and then play. So that's very interesting. So if I hit stop and then rewind, you'll see that it's moving in the other direction. I just think that's really cool. Now, you don't have to leave this open. You can close this drawer. And now some of the functions that you have in here: record level, manual record, Dolby. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. The record lock. You have, you know, an auto record, start, go functions. So you can synchronize this with both your CD or your record so that you can make compilation tapes. Because they knew that what people were doing back then was they would want to record from their record or from their CD to their cassette, because people didn't have CD in their car. I want to turn up the volume here, and I want to see if we can, I want to show the difference in the Dolby. Let me see. Dolby is, let me turn Dolby off. And I want to turn this up loud. You hear that hiss? Okay, that's without Dolby. Okay? All right, that's all the music I can play. Let me rewind it. Let me do that again. And I want to show you how the Dolby makes that hiss disappear. Watch this. It's just gone. Okay, that's B. That's C. No hiss whatsoever. Oh my God, the floor's shaking. Let me turn that down. So, how incredible the Dolby noise reduction is on this system. When you play a cassette, you forget how good the quality store-bought cassettes. When you bought a good name brand, you know, this was made by, let's see, this is Sire Records. But when you got a good, especially electronic music seems to play well on this. So I actually do like listening to cassettes on this thing. It has a certain tone. There's certain things you could only get on cassettes. You got to remember that throughout the 90s, they only made CDs and cassettes, they never made vinyl of a lot of those records. And there was a lot of smaller labels couldn't afford to do CD and only did cassettes. There's a lot of media out there. Maybe it's digital now, but you could only get that hard media on cassette. But anyway, how impressive is that system, right? Really cool. Let's really talk about the crown jewel and why people really want these systems now. It's because of vinyl. They want to be able to play records. All right, why would you even want a high-end record player in the first place? Let me find a cool looking record, hold on. So I like 80s synth pop. This is Altered Images. I've put this little shelf up there, my now playing shelf, so that's what I call it, my now playing shelf, so that you can display the album being played on your shelf. All right, this is a pink record. Now, I don't know if you can see this with the lighting. Let me set this record down because I want to point out how this thing works. And let me zoom in a little bit here. This right here senses whether or not you have a 45 or a center hole record. But it doesn't determine the speed. That's determined here at 33 or 45 because you could have a full-size 12-inch that runs at 45 and vice versa. Let's talk about the cartridge. The cartridge is this here, also called the needle for some of you new people. And I don't think I could zoom in on it, but you can buy different versions of this cartridge. And they're called the MMC, which is a magnetic movement coil. And you have versions 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 5 being the least. So what makes a cartridge better than the other? The needle, okay, is on this one, this is a number 2. One of the best you can get. The number 1 is obviously the best. But the arm that holds the little needle is made out of a sapphire crystal, and the actual needle itself is made out of a diamond. Why is that important? Because records are grooved like this. They're cut like this, right, in a triangular form. And the further down and pointy the needle can, the sharper the needle, the further down into the groove it can get and more of the information it can read. Do you understand? That's the important thing here. So when this little needle is trying to get into that groove and read, the further down it can get, the more frequency you're going to get. Now the problem is if you try to make the needle out of metal or something, it'll grind down rather quickly and it won't work. So this arm is made out of stone. It's made out of ruby, the arm that holds the needle, and the needle's made out of diamond. So this is about a $1,000 needle. This little tip here that plugs in, that's about $1,000. You get into the number 1 cartridge, which is an even higher resonance, it's almost $2,000. So if you get one of the cheaper, metal armed, one of the cheaper needles, which are, it would be, imagine the groove is like this and it's riding like that, it's only getting half of the sound. So when you buy a Crosley or a Walmart record player, you're not getting the sound of that record. You're getting 25-50% of the sound of that record if you're lucky. And it's just not gonna sound the same. And you're not even getting the point of what makes records great because the frequency of these vinyl records is much higher than even a CD player, okay? Now, this is a precision instrument. This is machined aluminum. Look at the brushed aluminum finish of this thing. Now, I have personally taken this unit apart because I had to fix it, and I've been all through this thing, and it is a precision piece of equipment. It's like a clock in there. And all of these things are very heavy. This is probably 50 pounds. I don't know, it's heavy. Like to carry all of this, you couldn't carry it all. You'd have to do it individually. These things are like bricks. They're like slabs of metal. Now, what's very interesting, I want to try to readjust the camera here because I want you to be able to watch what happens with this cartridge and this little laser reader here. I want you to watch this, what happens. Give me a second. So this is what's known as linear tracking, okay? So the needle arm, the tone arm, doesn't move like that, like most records. It moves in the same direction, in the same way they cut a record. So when I press play, it's going to spin up the record. A little light and laser back there is going to check to make sure that there's actually a disc there. And then, oh gosh, I got to turn down the sound. We can't have any sound, any of this music. although it's fantastic. Notice how quiet that is, the lead in? You don't hear anything, do you? A couple little pops. So we can't play any of that. Okay, let me turn that down. That's a song called You Could Be Happy. Great song. I want you to notice, see this little digital readout, a tiny, tiny digital display. Imagine in 1994 to see that. Let me see if I can zoom in even further. How far? Can you see that? How amazing is that? Now, if I were to press the 45 speed adjustment, it'll switch over to 45, the record speeds up. And you can see how much movement is in that record. Ugh. Let me put that back down to 33. Let me adjust this so you can see what's going on here. Anyway, if you wanted to change tracks, you would hit lift, all right? This little illumination comes on to light the tracks. Right, then you can turn, you can go select the track that you like. Now some units would actually do this automatically. This one doesn't. I have a Sansui model that's a linear tracking that will actually laser scan the gaps and actually skip tracks, and you can play them out of order. This one doesn't do that. But it is a highly precision unit, and it's just so clean. I wish there's no way for me to play you the music so that you can hear it, and then you can you know, the phone wouldn't be able to pick it up, and we wouldn't be able to play the music. You're just going to have to take my word for it that the difference of what's coming out of this thing as compared to what you're hearing with the Walmart, Best Buy systems, it's not even on the same scale. It's not on the same level. Now when I press stop, it will reset itself. And then a little brake will apply and it will stop the disc so that you can remove it. Check out the platter of that thing. It's polished aluminum. Have you ever seen something just wonderful? It's like a work of modern art. It's precision. I just can't gush about it enough. You know, as somebody who works on DeLoreans for a living, if this is your first time watching my channel and you haven't watched the other things that I do, you probably don't know that that's what I do. I can see a lot of inspiration that the DeLorean, or that they may have taken from the DeLorean also, but what a gorgeous system. Now, like I said, I didn't want to go into the, I didn't want to go into the complete history of Bang & Olufsen. These component systems, I think they started with the 5000 series, and they had the 5000, the 5500, the 6000, 6500, and on and on. The 7000 series was the last of these component systems like this. And they came in various colors too, by the way. This is the chrome kind of edition. There was a brushed aluminum version that was matte finish. They also came in black and also white. I would have loved to have had the white that matched this. But the colored versions are so much more expensive. And most of them you're going to find are going to come from Europe. Very hard to find these in the United States. Hard to find a Bang & Olufsen service center to work on them. So it takes sometimes, you know, unless you get lucky and find a complete system like this, it might take you a couple of years to put it together. I've spent over a year, maybe 2 years, assembling this system. I actually assembled a 5000 series system, which honestly, I kind of wish I'd have just kept that and left it. But I was having problems with the CD player unit, and I wanted the new modern version of the CD player, this one, which is completely different system, you know, completely different module than the one that was on the 5000. And I wanted everything to match. So I had to go out and find everything else to match this CD player. And the CD players are actually usually the most difficult of things. You'll find tons of combos of the cassette player and the tuner. And the tuner, there doesn't really have anything on it but a power button. That's it. There's no buttons here. Everything is done by the remote. There's a lot of the Bayo chords, as they're known. And you really just, you don't necessarily need to have it. Really, in my recommendation, I would say the two things you need the most is going to be the tuner and the turntable. If you just have those two things together, you probably don't need to play the CD player. You probably don't need to play the cassette. It's probably not that important to you to have those unless you really want the full retro look. Now, these can be stacked any way you want. You could, previously I had them stacked like this where they were all together. Also, there are auxiliary input cables, and you can simply use they make a Bluetooth adapter. It's like 15 bucks that you can get, that you can plug in, and you can Bluetooth into this thing. Then you got to figure out the speakers, whether or not you want powered speakers or unpowered speakers. I can't recommend the Pentas enough, but you're going to want to you're going to want to find them locally and go get them. Shipping these, I can't imagine what it would be like. They're very heavy. Like 2 people need to carry them. They're very, very heavy. They're made of stainless steel. They're powered. But these are some of the best. Now, there's a lot of other speakers out there you can get. You're going to spend a lot of money on them. And then you don't have to use Bang & Olufsen speakers, but this is the system that you saw in the catalog, and that's what I was trying to recreate. I saw the picture of it in the catalog, which I'll put up on the screen, and I go, I want to try to recreate that actual thing, and here it is. And I'm actually going to expand upon this wall. I went, like IKEA, they sell those cubes, you know, and we're going to have a series of cubes here mounted to the wall that the records will be in, but I need to have a solid foundation on the wall into the studs first because it's going to be very heavy. And I'll have all my records, and then I'm going to have a light there that kind of shines down on it, and then maybe another section for cassettes, and maybe another thing for CDs, and this will be a media wall, and that way you can walk up, pull out the record you want, there'll be a light shining here, you can put it in, and that's the plan. So I'm still working on this, but I thought this is a great way to show it as it is now. There's so many young people today that's never experienced listening to a hi-fi stereo. They've only ever heard music through their phone or through an ear pod or maybe a half-assed decent pair of headphones or maybe a pill or a Bluetooth speaker. They haven't experienced what it's like to play your music on a system like this where the entire floor shakes, where the pictures on the walls rattle. Now, if you live in an apartment, this would not be the system for you. And maybe that's really the point. You had to be kind of rich to have a system like this. Not only was it expensive, but you needed to live in a house that you could make noise. I have my own house, and this is a concrete slab floor. And when I play this thing even on low, my wife in the bedroom on the other, way over there, says she can feel the thump in the floor. This thing creates an envelopment of sound. Even though I sit over there and the speakers are over here and I'm not directly in front of it, the whole room is so full of sound coming at you from all angles. It's just you're just enveloped. It's like the air. And that's probably not something that you've experienced. I don't care if you've bought the nicest little Bose Bluetooth or whatever. It's not the same. And I think that the reason that us Gen Xers and the boomers or whatever are so connected to all of this older music is because there was such a connection to buying a record or a CD or cassette. You would open it up and there'd be pictures. There'd be the liner notes. There'd be the physical media. You remember what the cassette or the CD or the record looked like. You didn't have a phone previous to, 2007 when the iPhone came out. You just sat there and you looked at it. You looked at their picture. You read the track list. Or maybe you looked at a magazine while you listened to the radio. And you were engaged with it. You cared about it. Oh boy, I tell you, when you would get a double album like this Live Judas Priest, look at this thing. You would open this up. You'd have this whole big poster. And then you'd pull the record out. You know. Now this is a reissue. But you know, it was an experience. And it's not something that I don't think young people are as engaged with their music anymore as compared to the music that the boomers and Gen Xers had with our albums and CDs and cassettes and these things, because you kind of had to pay attention. You didn't have a choice. You were going to be part of it. You had to sit here. You didn't walk around the house with it. You didn't go jogging with it. The introduction of the Walkman changed all of those things. But it's just a whole different vibe. And I think that that's what's missing. And I think the reason that new music in the last 20 years hasn't caught on the way that all of the quote retro music is because people aren't connecting with it. When new music comes out, it's on your phone, you don't pay attention, you're distracted, you're in your car, whatever. But this, when new music came out, you went down to the record store. You had to go get it. Sometimes you had to wait in line. There were limited supplies. You would get it, you would bring it home, you'd unwrap it, you'd slide it out. It smelled, it had a smell. The vinyl, the plastic, the ink, the pictures, the way it sounded. You listened to the whole thing from beginning to end. Listening to a record is a lot like having an hourglass of sand. You would set it up, and as the sand trickles down, that time goes away. And it's invested into that, what you've just done. You're daydreaming, you're thinking, you're connecting with the lyrics, you're thinking about the band, you're looking at their photo. And that's why a Gen Xer like myself, 50 years old almost, we have such a connection to these certain bands, the loyalty to them, because we lived our lives album to album, concert to concert, t-shirt to t-shirt. And it was the soundtrack of our lives. You can really only do that with a hi-fi system. It's the only way to really make that bond and connection. So I encourage anybody that's interested in music, that wants to get into this hobby, start with what you can afford. But if you want to get into the Bang & Olufsen world, it's not crazy expensive. But I've lost track on how much money I've probably spent on this system. I probably spent $3,000 or $4,000 on this system, I guess. I'd have to, I've never really put pen to paper, just a wild guess. And a lot of times what you have to do in order to assemble a system like this is, for instance, I own, how many of these do I have? 2, 3 sets of these speakers? And yeah, I had 3 sets. I sold 1 pair. So I have 2 pairs of these speakers. I got another pair upstairs. So I had to buy multiple systems in order to cobble together the entire one that I wanted, and then I sold off the extra. That's why I have so many different remotes and different things. And I drove all the way from Las Vegas to Fort Worth, Texas, by the way, to get this table. And I had to buy a whole other system that I didn't even really want, that I'm ended up using in the other room, just so I could get this table. And that's how much effort I've put into this. So sorry that this is such a long, rambling video. Maybe you learned something, maybe it bored you to tears. I don't know. I wish I could really demonstrate how it works. You have to be standing here for that to happen. And it's a bit of a tease because you're going to have a real hard time assembling this very system if this is what you want. It took me a long time and a lot of money. But you can start small. My recommendations is, if you can find them locally, please do that, because the shipping of these very heavy and delicate systems, if they're not packed right, especially these turntables, because when they were shipped originally, they had special packing, and you know, these tables are locked down from the bottom. There's a special insert that goes in here and holds this together. You know, when these speakers were created and shipped, they were in special boxes. Same with all of these. And if the person just wraps it up in bubble wrap and puts it in a box, it's not going to arrive alive. It's just not. It's going to be broken. So if you can get it in person delicately and make sure it works and carry it home, that's what you want to do. You can still get these cartridges. A company called Soundsmith recreates the cartridges and needles. Plan to spend between $500 and $2,000 on a cartridge. A lot of times, sometimes it's better just to buy a similar turntable just to steal the cartridge out of it for your turntable, because they've been making these various turntables now for a long, long time, and you can spend as much as $4,000 to $5,000 on a Bang & Olufsen turntable. One like this one, you would spend about $1,000 for this particular model. But I've seen people asking as much as $8,000 for one of the black or white ones, just because of their collectability. The tuners are very readily available. They're pretty cheap, as well as the cassette players. The CD player is much harder to find. Expect to spend about $300 to $500 on the CD player. The remotes, there's lots of those out there for $20 to $200, whatever. That other one I showed you that moves, that thing was about $600. These large command controls, this thing runs on D batteries. It's very heavy. This goes to the 5000 series, but again, it'll work on any of them. These dials are usually broken or not working, so make sure that you test this and make sure that that works if you buy one of these. I've got 2 or 3 of these that are dead, well, they work, except this dial doesn't work. So those are some issues you might want to think about when you're shopping for one of these. Anyway, I'm sorry I've gone on way too long, but for someone who's really interested in this, this is all golden information. Anyway, I think I've told you just about everything I can tell you about this particular system. This one, again, is the 7000 series. Really, any of them from the 5000 to the 7000 component series. And they're not all compatible with each other. They're not always intercompatible. Like, you can't take this turntable and put it on a 5000 version. It doesn't work because the entire reason they made a new system is because it had different communication, different impedances, different preamps, all these different things. So they're not always 100% compatible. You can also look at a previous video that I did on my integrated system that had the built-in CD player, built-in cassette, and then the separate turntable. Those might be something that you're interested in. But in my opinion, the entire reason to get into this hobby is to support the vinyl addiction, mostly because they are reissuing vinyl. And vinyl is about the only hard media that you can still buy. I mean, you can go to a Guitar Center or Best Buy or Walmart and they sell vinyl records, but it's getting much harder to find even CDs. And quite frankly, the entire purpose of this hobby is to celebrate vinyl. Otherwise, if you just want the sound that comes out of these, you could just get the tuner and their speakers using a Bluetooth system and then stream that, but you're just not getting the same experience. What's the point? Anyway, I think I've droned on long enough. This is a very long video. Thank you so much for watching, and this is my Bang & Olufsen 7000 component series. I'm Videobob. Thanks for watching.